If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram at FitnessMama, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. So today I'm super excited to share this episode again. It's all about preparing for the fourth trimester. So it's actually one of the most popular episodes from 2022. It's a rerun from episode number 102. So a couple of weeks ago, you'll notice that I did a rerun of one of the most popular episodes of 2023. And now it's time for 2022. So in this episode today, I have a chat to Naomi, a postpartum doula, otherwise known as Cocoon by Naomi, and she gives some great strategies to help get the rest and support that you need in the early postpartum period. And I love this episode so much because a really important part of our postnatal recovery, our physical recovery, is tied up in caring for ourselves and getting the support we need in this crucial postpartum period. Because this stage, it's really about rest and rejuvenation. You could be the strongest woman in the world, but if you just had a baby, this is a stage where the best thing you can be doing for your body and your baby and bonding and all the rest is resting. So in this episode with Naomi, as I said, she gives some great tips and strategies to really help you get the rest and support that you need to help call upon that village. You're going to love this episode. So without further ado, let's jump in. Naomi, thank you so much for joining me today on the Fitness Mama podcast. It is great to have you. So for everyone listening, this is the lovely Naomi Chrysolakis, who you might know as Cocoon by Naomi. So Naomi, could you please give us a little quick rundown who you are or what do you do? What is a postpartum doula?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Kath. What do I do? Who am I? These are big questions. I'm a postpartum doula and a mum of two, and I live on Darawal country in New South Wales, near Wollongong. I'm a postpartum doula, as I said, and that is someone who looks after women and families after they have their babies. So often I say I'm a doula and people go, oh, great, you do births. No, I actually do after birth. So I often am working with women during pregnancy, helping them plan and prepare for the postpartum that they are hoping to get. But I really come into full swing with my support after the baby is born and when families really need help adjusting to the new dynamic. They need practical support, they need emotional support, and that's what I do. So I have a range of services that I offer, but at the heart of it is basically supporting people through nourishing food, through helping them shift into the mindset that they need for postpartum as they go through matrescence, helping them with sibling dynamics, with boundaries with in-laws, with all of the stuff that happens in postpartum that really, hopefully they come out of the first 3 months, the fourth trimester, feeling like they have been well rested as much as you can with a newborn, that they've been supported, that they've been really nourished in terms of their nutrition and their postpartum nutrition, and they're healing really well. That's basically what I do.
Basically, but it's so, in a nutshell, but it's so exciting to chat because Like if you're pregnant, don't tune out, because I feel that what we're talking about today, it is hard to get your head around when you're pregnant. Like I found this, and it's not until you're in the thick of it that you're like, oh, I understand why this is so important now. Maybe that's just me, but that, like, you hear...
no, that's most people.
Yeah,
and that was me too.
That's right. You hear about the fourth trimester vaguely in pregnancy, but the focus for me was definitely on the birth. And I can totally understand that in the pregnancy. So if you are pregnant, stay tuned, because it's exciting to chat, Naomi. So you've just dived into a lot of stuff there. Let's dissect what you've just talked about.
Sure.
So today I'd love to chat about 3 main categories.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 4.
All the things.
All the things. I want to really talk about how can we, let's start off. Oh my gosh, it's such a big topic, but it's also so narrow, so it's fantastic. Let's talk about rest. You know, we all know that postpartum is a time when we might be up all night feeding, and everyone says sleep when the baby sleeps, but how do you sleep when the baby sleeps when you might have toddlers, you've got a household that's going to fall apart? So I'd love to talk through some practical strategies with you as to how to actually overcome those barriers and help with rest.
Yeah. Okay, rest. It's the number one thing that you can do for yourself in postpartum. And as you were saying, it's really important to think about this stuff in pregnancy, because it's not that it's too late once you're in postpartum, but there's so much legwork that you can do in pregnancy to set yourself up for a really rested postpartum, whether it's your first baby or your 4th baby. It really depends on your circumstances. But I would say if you're not resting, you can't get anything else right. You know, no matter how well you're eating, no matter whatever you're doing, if you're not resting, forget about it. And we know that rest is what's going to help us heal. It's what's going to, we've talked before about the importance of rest on for your pelvic floor. It's also really important for your mental health, and just that healing. We know that after birth, we've got a wound the size of a dinner plate where our placenta is detached, and the body is, amazing. And the uterus, brings that all back together. So it's doing that, but we want to give it as much help as we can. And rest is really the way to do that. So I absolutely take your point about this whole, people go, but how? How can I rest? Who's going to do the laundry? What, like, I have got all this shit to do. This is where I say there's 2 sides to the coin. You cannot rest if you don't have support. We aren't meant to do postpartum and child rearing alone. Anthropologists have shown that back, before the industrial age, we would have been in villages and tribes, and, there's still plenty of cultures around the world who operate like this, where there would be 16 other adults helping to raise our children, 16 other pairs of hands to take that baby and rock them so, you can do your thing, 16 other pairs of hands who would take care of the laundry, who would feed you a meal, who would do all of that. So it's really important to recreate that village, and it's not going to look like it would have looked like for our great-great-great-grandmothers, but we can actually make it happen if we are willing to ask for help, if we are willing to invest some energy, possibly some money, depending on your circumstances. Sometimes you might need to pay for some of that village. That's okay. So it's thinking about, like I often say to my clients, I'm coming in to take the things off your to-do list that are stopping you from resting. I'm coming in to do the laundry, I always come in and fill people's fridges with food that I've made, and so that they've got food for the week, so they don't have to cook. I do their laundry. I'm often like walking a dog. I'm playing with a toddler. Now I do that. I'm paid to do that. But this is not rocket science. This is not something that friends, family, neighbours can't do. But it has to come from you. And that is where it gets really tricky, because we are living in a culture where we are conditioned from birth, basically, to be independent, cope, don't ask for help. That's a sign of weakness. Don't be vulnerable. Get on with stuff. Don't be a burden. That is all going to fall apart in postpartum. If you try and go it alone, you're going to have a shit show. That's just some really raw, honest truth telling there. So you need to get the meal train happening. which is like a roster for people. There's a website called mealtrain.com where you can set up or ask a friend to set it up for you if you feel awkward asking people to do it. Ask a friend, please set up a meal train for me. Go on mealtrain.com, set up a calendar, send out an email. All of those friends, families, co-workers, neighbours, anyone who's like, let me know if there's anything I can do. This is what they can do. They can sign up for a day where they bring you a meal and they drop it on the doorstep. It's not about visitors. It's definitely not about entertaining or hosting anyone, because that is not a postpartum vibe. And that's a really good place to start. If you can find people who can bring you meals, that's a big thing off the list. If you have a mother-in-law who maybe isn't great with like emotional support, but is great at doing laundry, great. Let's harness that and get her on the laundry, or outsource it. You know, get one of those pickup services for your laundry. There are so many ways that you can get that support and take those things off your to-do list. There are people who can come and play with toddlers. There are neighbours, you know, friends with other kids who can take your toddler out to the park. You can't just throw up your hands and be like, oh, I can't rest when the baby rests. You can if you've planned for it. And like I offer postpartum planning sessions where I actually dive in with people to their specific circumstances and come up with those plans for them, because it is really important to do that in pregnancy. Otherwise, you do find yourself going, when can I lie down? When can I rest? And then you're sleep deprived and you're hormonal, and it's just not a happy time.
And that's so great that you do sit down on one-on-one basis, because I can imagine some of what you just suggested then, a little part of me on the inside went, oh, I couldn't ask that. Whereas other stuff that you suggested, I thought, oh, yeah, I'd be comfortable asking that. So then if we can identify what we're comfortable asking and what we're thinking, oh, you know, curling our toes at, then we can, the stuff that we're not as comfortable with, we could brainstorm other ways. For example, if you don't want to ask someone to set up a meal train, you could think, okay, what are some meal delivery services, or what are some really quick, if your partner can do an online shop and really quick, 5-minute meals that they can take care of. So brainstorming other options as well.
Absolutely. There's always, many, many ways to do things. And like for my second baby, my first baby, I didn't know any of this stuff. It was a disaster. My second baby, I filled two freezers full of food, and I had a meal train, and I didn't have to cook for 3 months. I would just say, I do like to gently challenge people to rethink this conditioning around not being able to ask for help and feeling uncomfortable. I get it. I'm the same. And that's why I asked a good friend to set up the meal train for me. So there's always little ways around it. But I tell people, I know, like, I get it. It is uncomfortable. But have a think about if you had a good friend who said to you, do you think you could drop a meal on my doorstep like once? Like, personally, I'd be like, of course. And thank you so much for asking me, because now I feel needed and I love to help and I want to help and I want to do something that's actually useful, rather than buying you another cute onesie that your baby will wear twice and shit all over, and done. Yeah. Like, let's actually do something that's useful for families and that's supportive of getting their rest. So I get it. There is a lot of like inner work that needs to happen in postpartum as well. And part of that is asking for support and setting boundaries. This is not easy stuff that we're talking about. This is why you got to start in pregnancy.
Yeah, you're right. And what you just said, I think totally hit the nail on the head in terms of you do have to challenge your inner beliefs and what you've grown up with. And even now as a school mum, I still hate asking other mums to perhaps pick up my kids. Like, I always feel I need to reciprocate it, and that's fine. I'm very happy to reciprocate it, but I'll never just directly say, could you do such and such for me? I'll always say, hey, if I pick up your kid on Friday, do you mind picking up my kid on Wednesday? So maybe I need to come and have a session with you, Naomi.
Look, I think I really love the work of Dr. Sophie Brock, who really unpacks beautifully this concept of patriarchal motherhood that we're in, and that we are so conditioned into thinking about the good mother. What does the good mother do? The good mother doesn't have to ask for help because she's got her shit together. But actually, that's just a myth. That is a total myth. We are not meant to do this in isolation at all. And we've got one in 5 women have a baby who end up with postpartum anxiety or depression. Like, I wonder why. We're not meant to do this alone.
100%. There we go. I'm sure everyone listening today has some food for thought.
a little bit of tough love there. But that's probably the biggest thing that you can do for rest, is find ways to get that support. And of course, there is a lot of stuff that you can do ahead of time. Like I said, filling your freezer with nourishing postpartum food is a huge one. If you don't have to think about what you're cooking for that night, that takes a big mental load off your mind. And even like investing in a slow cooker, I think is like so important for new parents, so that if your partner's going back to work, if you're in that setup, partner can pop on the slow cooker of a morning, partner can get into the habit of putting a load of laundry on in the morning, so that you really are sharing that load. And it's not just they've, racked off to the office for the day and you're going, well, great, how do I get anything done when I've got a cluster feeding baby on me? That, you actually kind of have to have the conversations and think up some systems that work for your, house and your world and what's important to you. Like for me, I hate seeing our little compost bucket on the kitchen sink overflowing. I can't bear it. So I remember saying to my partner, like, just please make sure that's done in the morning so I don't have to have that driving me nuts. For some people it's the overflowing laundry basket. But and things like pets, and you can get people, like, get the dog walker and pay for it if you need to, or ask the kid up the road to start walking your dog for $5 or whatever. There's always a way.
Yeah. And you're right. If we can start this in pregnancy, which is actually really good for your body during pregnancy, to be not hauling loads of wet washing and laundry. And so if we can start to implement just a few of these changes during pregnancy, it can help also with that transition to postpartum.
Yeah. And I think it's a mindset thing too. It's like in pregnancy, start asking for help, because it is uncomfortable for everyone. Start asking for help and start saying no to stuff too. That's the other thing. Start saying no when you're asked to do something or to go somewhere that you don't want to do. It's a really important muscle to start working on in pregnancy, so that when it comes to postpartum, you're at least had some practice in the setting of boundaries and some practice in the asking for help, so that you don't get all in your head. I mean, you still will, but hopefully because you've had that practice, even just, starting to ask neighbours, like, would you mind, like I had neighbours who I asked to just take the bins out for us, which is something that's quite easy for people to do and they're happy to do it. But starting to ask them in pregnancy means that then hopefully they'll keep it going in postpartum. Just little things.
Yeah, opening up those lines of communication. So you talked about boundary setting. Let's dive into that one next, because again, that's one that I think, and maybe this is just myself and a bit of a counselling session, but that's one that makes me feel a bit uncomfortable with too. So today's episode is brought to you by Edwards & Co, a New Zealand-owned stroller and nursery brand offering prams and accessories aimed at making parenting a smoother ride. If you're a soon-to-be parent, you'll know, or you're soon to find out, that choosing a pram can be overwhelming. Edwards & Co is here to ease you into new parenthood with pram features you didn't know you needed before having a baby. The prams are easy to fold, light, and easy to push and maneuver. And here's the best part. Edwards & Co is offering our listeners an exclusive deal. Head to edwardsandcobaby.com.au and use the code FITNESTMAMA, that's FITNESTMAMA, at checkout for 15% off store-wide. Once more, that's using the code FITNESTMAMA at edwardsandcobaby.com.au for 15% off store-wide. This episode is brought to you by Baby Bee, Australian-owned and designed prams combining quality, safety and style. Not only does Baby Bee let you try their prams at home with free returns for 9 months, yes, that's 9 months, they also offer an industry-leading 3-year warranty for total peace of mind. With thousands of 5-star reviews, around-the-clock customer care, and up to $300 of free accessories with every pram, what are you waiting for? go visit www.babybeonline.com and check them out for yourself. And yes, for listeners of the podcast, there is a 20% discount code. Enter FITBEE, FITBEE 20 at checkout, and T's and C's apply.
Mate, me too. Boundaries are really hard for most people. And I think, asking for support and setting healthy boundaries is like two sides of the same coin. It's really hard. And I still struggle with this. I'm not coming from a place of, I've got it all right and this is how you do it. I struggle big time as well because I am a recovering people pleaser, recovering nice girl. And I just say postpartum is not the time to be letting people walk all over you. So have a little think. I mean, the biggest thing I think in terms of boundaries is who do you want showing up in your, not to get too woo-woo, but really sacred postpartum time. It is a very special moment and it's over in, a heartbeat. So who do you want in that space? Do you want hordes of family coming and sitting for hours and hours and expecting you to make sandwiches and tea for them? Do you want, your aunt who triggers the hell out of you coming and telling you you should be doing things differently with your baby? No. You need to have a think about who feels supportive to you, who listens without fixing. Who are those people? And a good rule of thumb is like, who are you comfortable with being topless in front of? Because chances are, if you're breastfeeding, you're going to be topless a lot of the time. And if you're doing postpartum right for the first few weeks, you should be spending a hell of a lot of time in bed or like lying prone. So, who are you comfortable doing that around? That's a pretty good litmus test.
Question for you, Naomi. You've just talked about getting that village around you and, 16 other adults in the tribe sort of thing. But now we're talking about limiting people.
Yeah.
It's a really fine balance, right? Because some of these people that you might be limiting might have actually not been expecting sandwiches and tea. They might have actually been wanting to help. So how...
That's where you have to use your discernment, and you also have to set expectations in pregnancy. So, for example, I help clients often with like drafting an email in pregnancy, a group email that goes out, setting the expectations out, saying things like, we're so excited for you to meet, we're so excited to meet the baby. We're so excited to introduce the baby to our community. We have decided that while we settle into life with the newborn, we won't be having visitors outside our immediate family for the first 2 weeks or whatever it is that they decide. We'll let you know when we're ready, and we won't be really in the mood for, we probably, in our sleep-deprived state, won't be really in the mood for hosting, but we would be so grateful if you come at a mealtime, if you bring some food along with you, that would be amazing. If you fancy helping out while you're here, as you know, life is tricky with a newborn, we would love it if you could X, Y, Z, like put on a load of laundry, do the dishes that are in the sink, whatever it is, like take the dog to the grass verge, whatever. So it's actually setting up the expectation that you're not there to just hold a baby, you're there to support the family. So you want people in your space who are going to be willing to do that. And you don't want the people in your space who are going to sit there for 4 hours and just hold the baby while you're sore and bleeding and feeling awkward about feeding and all of those things. So you have to use your own discernment in who those people are, but you also need to set up the expectation with clear communication. There's no point in just wishing that these things will happen and hoping that people will turn up for you in the way that you need. You need to know how you need to be shown up for, just part of what we're talking about today. And B, you need to tell them in like a, non-demanding, but like this is what would be actually really helpful, because people genuinely want to help, want to be there for you, want to support you. But our culture has forgotten how to support postpartum families. They think that rocking up with a lasagna and holding the baby for 4 hours is the thing to be done. That's just not the best thing to do. And I think if you can kind of clearly communicate with people, most people are really happy to step up and do that. And you just have to kind of, this is the inner work of going, well, who who is it who is that person for me who is a great listener? Great, I want them in my space. Who is it that is maybe a tricky personality but is really like great at like helping out with doing some cooking? Well, great, I'll have them in my space, but I will specifically ask them. I will harness the good things and I will set a boundary for the bad stuff. So if it, for example, partners can play a really important role here of not allowing visitors to stay for longer than 45 minutes an hour. Like that should be tops that visitors are staying. And first 2 weeks, I think visitors should be absolutely minimal and meals dropped on the doorstep are the most appropriate form of support. Unless you've got someone who is that person who you are happy to be topless in front of and is a great listener and you are happy to cry in front of and you're really in that incredibly raw, tender first few weeks, those are the only people in your space. Other people, I know that it's like this feeling of, well, I'm obliged to let my, father-in-law meet the baby. Yes, that's fine. But can you just have a short visit? Can they also, just help out with something while they're there? There's Dr. Oscar Serelak, who wrote the Postnatal Depletion Cure. His motto, which I think is fantastic, is no visitors, only staff. So we've got to flip this idea of, oh, we're hosting visitors. Like I was up making tea for people with my first baby, doing laundry while they held my baby. The stupidest stuff that now I'm like, why did I do that? I know why, because that's what we've been conditioned to kind of do. But it's a whole other game in postpartum. This is not normal life. This is a moment in time where you need to be supported and you deserve to be supported. And that is really where a lot of mindset work needs to come into play.
Yeah, love all that. And I do just want to, like for anyone listening, that I'm sure all of us are thinking, oh, I didn't do that. If we've already had a baby or if you're about to have your first baby, perhaps like we all grow and learn and, things we might plan for all of this, but also let's not be too hard on ourselves if, like what you just said, why did I do that? Like, we did that because that's what we were equipped with first time round. You learnt from that, you changed it second time round. So I think we've also got to have that grace within ourselves that,
absolutely,
we will get things wrong and we will do things differently next time. So that's part of it too.
Absolutely. Like when you know better, you do better. What you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And like I said, this culture's forgotten about what postpartum really is like and what we really need. And it's not spoken about enough. And so people aren't as aware. But I think and
that's why it's great to have you in the corner as sort of the cheerleader and just, opening up these thoughts and ideas. Oh, yeah, maybe I could ask this or maybe I could suggest this to the next visitor. So having a support person like yourself, I can see the benefit because it might put you out, like as you said, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, it's easier often for people, either they genuinely don't have the support or there are people who it's just too hard to ask for that support. So to have someone who they're paying to come in and support them in a way that I know is really nourishing for them. And if they're not getting that from elsewhere, then I can at least be a part of that. So,
yeah, it's important, isn't it? Okay, can we talk through, because I did have a little sneaky peek of your beautiful website before we jumped in, and you talk about how you help with the mindset shifts to get the most out of motherhood. So we've talked about rest, we've talked about boundaries, but I'd love to just have a little chat about those mindset shifts that you spoke about. It's a beautiful thing to consider because, again, you don't know what you don't know. So, yeah.
And I think, there's a lot of commonalities in the motherhood experience, but everyone's very different. So I'm going to speak in really general terms, but maybe some of it doesn't resonate, some of it does. I think in early motherhood, particularly if it's your first baby, there's a lot of natural kind of, wanting to get it right and worry that, am I getting it right? Is my baby okay? Am I okay? Should I be doing this? Should my baby be doing that? Which I think can quite easily tip over into anxiety and suck out the joy of mothering if we let it. So I think there's a normal level, and I think everyone goes through that. And then there's if we get too sucked into the noise, particularly around baby sleep, around feeding, around routines, around all these things, if we get too sucked in and start going, oh, should I be doing this? But I read there's this way. How do I do? But then they've said this. It takes away from learning about our intuition. And I say learning about our intuition because I think it's quite hard to tap into first thing. It's a huge, massive transition and huge learning curve. And to go, well, just trust your intuition, I think is hard because you don't really know what your intuition is. But the more you're hearing from outside, the less you're able to tune into what feels right for you and what's working for you and your baby. And that's very individual.
Yeah. And Naomi, I feel like you're talking to me 9 years ago with my first. Like I feel
same. I mean, I was exactly the same.
Like, how do you know?
That was me. That was me.
Yeah.
I had a really unsettled baby. I love a routine. I loved pre-baby. I was like, right, I study hard. I put in the hard yards. I put in the hours and I get shit done. Well, my little firecracker of a baby decided to come along and teach me, no, Mama, that's not how things work anymore.
Yeah.
And inviting me into this whole new phase of personal growth, really, to learn that I'm not in control. She's in control. And I learned that the hard way by A, having postnatal anxiety, B, just desperately searching for answers about why my baby wouldn't sleep for more than 45 minutes on me, why she wanted to co-sleep, but oh my God, that's dangerous. No, can't do that. Why she was breastfeeding for an hour when she's not meant to breastfeed. She didn't do any of the things that I thought she should do. A friend told me at the time, shoulds are a red flag, and I really, truly believe that. So, I eventually found my way, and I believe that everyone will as well.
That's right. And that's part of the learning process because I remember, we all start motherhood most of us start motherhood not having any idea. And I had read, one of the only books I'd read was, I won't say the name, but it was a really popular sleep book, about 9 years ago. And
I probably know the one that I like to burn if I ever see it.
And my mother-in-law said to me, anyone with that book, the best thing they can do is take it to the backyard and bury it as deep as possible. But I remember being really, this book to me was my lifeline, right?
Yeah.
I felt if I didn't have that book, I knew it was making me anxious. But I was like, if I don't have this book, what do I don't know what to do. So I need this book, even though everyone's telling me this book is terrible. But I think this book's brilliant because it's my lifeline. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. And I know what you're talking about. And sadly, it's not the only kind of program, book, whatever out there that encourages people to be really rigid. I would say if you're ever being told by anyone, maternal child health nurse, midwife, book, influencer, whatever, to do things this way and this is how, and this is the time and this is the rigid thing and you should be doing this and the baby should be doing, this is the routine, or you should always swaddle your baby, or you should. No, because babies are not robots. The actual gift of motherhood, if you don't already have it, is learning how to be flexible, because not only are babies all different, but they all change on such a rapid rate. You can have a baby who 1 week is doing things, one way, and then the next week they've gone through developmental leave, they're teething, they've been sick, whatever, they change things up. So to try and stick with a rigid plan, for me, I tried to do this. Went out when I was about 2 weeks postpartum. I went out and I bought a book, not that book, but a book, which was quite, and I thought it was meant to be more gentle and whatever. It wasn't hardcore, but even just trying to do this nighttime routine of it was breast, bath, breast, bed. Even just that as a nighttime rhythm almost destroyed my sanity because my child just wouldn't have a bar of it. She just screamed the house down. She didn't want to do that. That was not the way she did things. I just encourage people to not listen to any of those kind of books, but to look at the evidence around how babies are built. We can't fight biology and we can't fight nature. And unfortunately, because we're in a society where we like to teach babies to be independent, babies like to be close to their mothers. Until babies are 4 months old, it is a fact that they don't know that they're a separate entity to their mother. So they need to hear a heartbeat and feel the closeness and the warmth. We know that being next to our baby regulates their heartbeat, regulates their breathing, regulates their temperature. This is how we're built. We are a mother-baby dyad, a mama toto, they call it. We have this symbiotic relationship where, and the baby being on us is helpful to us. It increases our oxytocin, which keeps our mood stable, which helps our milk supply, which helps our wounds heal. It makes sense to follow the biology and not to follow the books. Yeah. I could talk for hours about that, but I won't.
So for anyone listening that's thinking, okay, no books, follow the biology, what next steps would you suggest? Are there any great podcasts you recommend, or any great, how do we follow the biology?
How do we learn? Yeah. Well, there's a fantastic book that I love called The First 40 Days, which is a great guide and cookbook for the first 40 days and is great at kind of introducing these concepts. The Possums program is a sort of sleep support that's based on neurodevelopment evidence and principles. So I don't think you even need to do that. But if you're seeking some kind of, advice, and I get it, I was also like, oh, I need to know, you need some guidance. I have a podcast too, and I've got a few great episodes on there around sleep with Dr. Howard Chilton, actually, is amazing. He's an Australian pediatrician. He's got a book called Your Cherished Baby, I really recommend that book. It's amazing. And yeah, he was on my podcast for a fantastic episode. Pinky McKay, I love. Yeah, there's some great people out there. Yeah, so there is that information there. It's just a matter of finding it and also just shutting out the noise. If you're following sort of sleep stuff that's making you stressed, I know it's hard, but just unfollow, put the book down and try to get that baby skin to skin and look at them, listen to them, watch their cues. Are they hungry? Feed them. There's no way that 1,000 years ago there were babies who were watching the clock in terms of, I can only feed them every 3 hours. That's not actual normal newborn behaviour. It's important just to kind of get an understanding of that normal newborn behaviour. That's something that I do in the planning sessions as well. It's we talk about sleep, we talk about feeding, we talk about all of that unsettled behaviour that is really hard to deal with if you don't know what's coming. If you know what's coming and you've got some strategies under your belt, that is how you kind of deal with it.
Well, Naomi, we could keep talking all day, and we only got through half of what I was hoping to, but we will wrap it up there. You have been really generous with the information you've provided us today. How do people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Cocoon by Naomi, which is COCOON by BY, Naomi, NAOMI, or cocoonbynaomi.com, which is my website where you can book in a planning session or talk to me about support, all the other things.
Or the podcast, Cocoon by Naomi.
Yes, it's called Tales from the Fourth Trimester.
Oh, whoops. Yeah.
But yeah, you will probably find it if you just search that.
Yes. Thank you so much, Naomi. I really appreciate the chat today.
Kat.
That's it, ladies. Before I sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links, including how to connect with Naomi at fitnessmama.com/podcast. And don't forget to send myself a message on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. If you've enjoyed this podcast episode or any previous episodes, please do send me a DM. That's it, ladies. Have a fabulous day, and I look forward to you joining me very soon for another episode of the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at FitnessMama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.